Let's do one last story. I just want to highlight this. A group of Latin American leaders, we'll pull this article up in a second. A group of Latin American leaders are supporting calls for sanctions on Israel. Um, and, this is relevant, obviously, because this comes in terms of the annexation, which we covered at the beginning of the show, and just the sort of aggressive defying of any type of observance of basic standards from the Israeli government. But it also shows how interconnected things are. And these leaders, as would not shock you, most of them are former leaders. I'll quote, and actually maybe we could pull this up from Mondo Weiss. Mondo Weiss is a good site for following Israel-Palestine. Former Latin American presidents, former Latin American presidents Dilma Rousseff, Lula da Silva, Evo Morales, Ernesto Samper, Rafael Correa, Jose Mujica, and Fernando Lugo are among, and that's Brazil, Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, and Mujica, they missed, that's Uruguay and Paraguay, are among over 320 public figures from Latin America who signed a statement released yesterday calling for sanctions against Israel as a response to Israel's planned to de jure annexation of occupied Palestinian territory and its ongoing de facto annexation and apartheid. Other prominent signatories include Brazilian singer Chico Buarque, and it goes on. Just a little bit more. I want to read just slightly from the statement. Yeah, the increasing severity of Israel's violations and its impunity obliges us to respond to the call issued by the overwhelming majority of Palestinian civil society organizations. We endorse the Palestinian call for banning the arms industry and military security cooperation with Israel, suspending free trade agreements with Israel, prohibiting trade with illegal Israeli settlements, and accountability from individuals and corporate actors complicit in Israel's occupation and coup regime. Scroll down a little bit more. This is Celso Amorim, who's been a guest on TMBS. I'd strongly recommend you watch his interview, former Brazilian foreign minister. The proposed annexation of Palestinian territory by Israel is not only an offense against international law and a threat to peace, is an attack against women and men who fought against colonialism and apartheid. The voice of the South must be heard. And I think this is very important. This is the sort of grounded, real internationalism and solidarity that we are so passionate about. It shows, again, that when the United States undermines the pink tide, that has global implications, particularly in the type of leadership that a leader like Lula was trying to exercise in terms of charting a course for policy in the developed world outside of singular U.S. hegemony. This is important. The ideals of the non-aligned movement were never realized, and they are key. They are key for not only rights issues like this, but actually arms control and some sense of basic stability, security, and delivery in the international system. So these things are quite interconnected. There's also the other flow that goes back to Latin America, and people can look particularly at the 80s, whether it be the vicious, grotesque regimes the United States backed in Guatemala, El Salvador, and of course the Contras in Nicaragua, and also the arrangements running through Panama before the U.S. invasion of Panama, which of course was another great crime. But when Noriega was our partner, Israel was connected to that matrix. There was Israeli military trainers, gun runners, and intelligence operatives connected with those dirty wars in Latin America as well. So those connections run very, very deep. And it's important to understand that you cannot separate, any of these trajectories from each other, and that Israel, unfortunately, has really been, core, obviously. I mean, there's the Saudi-Israeli axis that causes so much damage in the Middle East, but it's also been, even including in the kind of, a very offensively named Safari Club with partnerships across Africa, that it has been connected to. So even when, and I'm sure these connected to U.S. exploits and aggressive policies, Cold War policies, war on terror policies. And it's also important to note that too, because I have no doubt, and in this case, obviously there's definitely anti-Semitic people that criticize Israel. These leaders most certainly are not. And there's certainly voices for actual pluralism in their societies. And so not only is it a thing that Palestinian oppression is a kind of global symbol of like sort of southern repression from the northern world, and that sort of not literal geography, but conceptually. It's also that Latin American leaders on the left understand the actual direct roles that connect the US military, the Israeli military, and their own reactionary forces that are, of course, backed by the US and ascendant right now.
You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.